All right, so the next type of firm we're going to look at that's in between competitive markets and a monopoly is called monopolistic competition. And so despite its name, monopolistic competition, it's actually closer to the competitive markets end of the spectrum. The reason it's called monopolistic is because, like monopolies, they have some degree of market power. They have some ability to control the price that they charge. So that's why it's called monopolistic competition, but again, it is closer to the competitive end of the spectrum. Right, so what we saw last time, right, or previously, competitive markets promote social welfare, maximizing social welfare, whereas monopolies pretty much do the opposite. We saw that perfectly competitive markets and monopolies are, again, at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of firm types. And just like perfectly competitive firms, monopolies also try to maximize profit. That's true of all firms. And from an efficiency standpoint, the monopolist charges too much and produces too little, and that basically creates our deadweight loss. Now, we're going to mix it up a little bit here. So instead of looking at some material and then doing some practice problems, we're going to start it off with some practice questions, right? So here's a good one. Which of the following industries fits most closely with the model of monopolistic competition? Okay, so recall these types of firms are closer to the competitive side of the spectrum. So if you need to, take a minute, maybe thumb through your book if you haven't already read the chapter, which hopefully you have, but if you haven't, go ahead and pause the video and try to figure out the answer here. Okay, so hopefully you figured out the answer was, the best answer choice was D, fast food restaurants. Now farming, B, answer choice B, of course, is one of the examples we saw of what's most likely a competitive market. And then, of course, in the last chapter, chapter 10, we saw that diamond mining is actually a monopoly in real life. So hopefully you could have at least eliminated those. And then A, automotive production or automobile production turns out to be the last type of market or industry that we're going to look at after this chapter in chapter 13. But fast food restaurants turn out to be basically a form of monopolistic competition. All right, here's another one. Which of the following is a monopolistic competitor? So pretty similar question. Again, if you need to, go ahead and pause the video. Take a second to think about this. Thumb through the book if you need to, and then come back when you're ready to answer. All right, so hopefully after thinking about it a little bit, you determined that the correct answer choice was C, a big and tall clothing store. A, again, is produce, farming. This is probably a Granny Smith apple grower is probably going to be in a competitive industry. A local electric company, as it turns out, is a type of natural monopoly. It's a monopoly that has incredible economies of scale because of the huge upfront cost, but then almost zero marginal cost of production. And then again, General Motors is going to be, as it turns out, part of oligopoly. All right, one more. Which of the following is true about monopolistic competition? Again, if you need to, go ahead and pause the video and take a second to think about this. Okay, hopefully you came to the conclusion that the correct answer was B. It results in higher prices than perfect competition. So, as it turns out, because these types of firms sort of fall along a spectrum, and we've seen the two extremes already, perfect competition ends up providing the industry or the market with the lowest price. Monopolies end up charging the highest price, and so A is incorrect. Monopolies charge the highest price. Monopolistic competition, firms in monopolistic competition would end up therefore charging a lower price, but the price is going to be higher than in perfect competition. All right, so our big questions for this chapter. What is monopolistic competition? I've kind of given you some hints, but we'll talk about it in detail. What are the differences among monopolistic competition when comparing them to competitive markets and monopoly?